Welcome to Your Art is a Spell. This is episode 3, and I'm so excited to share this lovely conversation I had with the artist Kira Xonorika. We met at LACMA on the LACMA campus in front of the Brea Tar Pits, and you will see it was a cute little scene, and we got to have a wonderful conversation about so many different topics that I'm excited for us to dive into. But before we do, I want to read you Kira's bio. Kira Xonorika is a groundbreaking artist, writer, and futurist whose work operates at the intersections of technology, culture, and identity, focused on using AI as a collaborative medium. Xonorika delves into complex themes relating to ancestry, Indigenous worldviews, and a critique of artificial boundaries, such as those between male and female, utopia and dystopia, and human versus machine, have historically reinforced Western colonial systems of power. By challenging our preconceptions around identity, Xonorika prompts us to reconsider these categories as fluid rather than fixed, echoing nature's own disdain for rigid classifications. Mine too. Xonorika has recently been on a roll and exhibited her art in Los Angeles, New York, and Berlin. And she's honestly going to continue to show her work. And, one of the things I'm excited for you to hear about is how Kira and I met, because it's such a sweet story. And I think it really exemplifies the power of your art being a spell. So excited to share this conversation with Kira Xonorika. I'm here at the Brea Tar Pits and LACMA with the incredible artist Kira Xonorika, and I'm so excited to have a conversation with her today and to have her on the podcast, Your Art is a Spell. Welcome, Xonorika. Thank you so much for being here, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself to folks.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor. And honestly, the view here is lovely. I'm loving the weather. I've never seen this part of LACMA before, so that's cool. But anyway, an introduction. So I'm an artist. I have an interdisciplinary practice with writing and futurist foresight. And in my work, should I go technical?
Yeah, I'd love for you to go technical, yeah.
Okay. So in my work, I explore the connections between technoscience, indigenous sovereignty and data, speculative futures, magic, that's very important, and ecology. I also love fashion. That's kind of implicit in my work, but yeah.
Well, wonderful. Yeah, I'd love for you to explain. You just use a lot of big words, and I'm curious that there might be folks who might not know what some of the things you shared are. So I'd love for you to share what some of the things that you are interested in are, in case there are folks who are like, what do those things mean, in case they don't know?
Yeah. So I guess to summarize, I'm very interested in how technology meets science, and this comes from thinking about artificial intelligence. My work has a particular focus around AI, and I'm interested in the field of AI and how that intersects with planetary challenges, climate change, and I guess also thinking broadly of art as this kind of portal to think about these big ideas that are present in our everyday lives through a framework of indigenous sovereignty, thinking about how indigenous peoples can exist in the present and how we can assert our existence, our right to be here, and how we can bloom. Yeah.
I love that. And especially with the theme of this podcast being Your Art is a Spell, I love that you bring in the idea of portals and also Indigenous sovereignty. And I'd love for you to share, because I'm really interested for folks to know about how you and I connected. And also, I think it fits in a lot with the theme of this podcast. So I'd love for you to just share how we kind of got to become a part of each other's web in a way.
So I started following you on Instagram at some point, like I would say maybe post pandemic times. And then you once posted that you were going to have a workshop around art as spell making. And at the time, I had certain practices with the opaque, like I've done velomancy, like I've worked with crystals and herbs. I guess this idea really resonated with me because I wanted to revitalize my art practice. And then I took your workshop. And I do remember you, in your workshop, you talked about the power of intention and kind of using symbols and colors and bringing that intention of freedom and expression into the works. And I do remember the works that I created in that workshop because I was doing heavy graphic design at the time, and they were like very graphic designy.
Yeah.
And they were also, I would say, to a certain degree, inspired by your Neorikas. And I really like the way you use, like, you engage with space and time through your work. Then I learned more about your practice and why it is so meaningful and how it's so, it's a map in itself. But yeah, I remember the works that came out of that workshop were very like graphic design oriented. Let's say that. But yeah, and that was like a month or two before I first got into LA, and then I moved to LA, and then I started working with AI because it was like the hot new thing. So I had worked with AI before, but image generation was, at this level, was very new. And obviously there was a lot of hype around it. And I just wanted to explore language, and I just wanted to explore certain ideas or kind of feelings I had inside. And that's how I just started creating a world with AI. And yeah, I feel like taking that workshop was so meaningful. I always tell this story, but I feel like that workshop really changed my life and my artistic trajectory in so many ways. You were just such a generous educator, such a generous artist sharing about your work, and I feel like that really inspired me, and I'm sure I'm just one of many.
Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate it. And it's such an honor that my workshop could be a place for you to reconnect with practices that you were already connecting with, and also then get curious around AI and start to explore other mediums. And I think one of the reasons I'm just like so excited to have you on this podcast and to also to share about you and your work is ever since that workshop, ever since you started to explore AI, your work has like traveled the world, and people from all over have been really connecting with the worlds that you've been making, with the imagery, the dreamlike spaces, the surreal magic that you've been bringing into this world. You just shared that you were working a lot with words, and I also know that you're a prolific writer as well, and I would love to hear about your relationship with words and how they kind of come into your art practice, and also maybe if you wanted to share a little bit about your writing practice, because it does feel like connected to the emergence of your art as well.
Yeah, so I would say that my writing practice really started as kind of a way of understanding the more raw aspects about reality. Obviously, before it was kind of centered around the way in which like geopolitics connect with lawmaking policy, but also at a certain point was very focused on transgender issues. And I felt like when I started working with AI and prompts, the way of writing and engaging with language was so different that the previous writing that I had done, because it felt like more spontaneous. It felt like more, I want to achieve this texture, I want to achieve this color. It was more playful. And what I really enjoy about generating images with AI, it's kind of, you're creating your own movie as you iterate different times, and then you don't like this result, then okay, maybe try that thing and go that way. And of course, back then at the time, we didn't have AI animation at the capacity that we have today. So perhaps you creating your own movie feels more literal now. I felt like for me, writing initially started as a place of let's talk about the urgency of community and what is happening and what we need to move forward. And with image making, it's kind of, creating this constellation of ideas and the world where we want to live in, which to me feels like a more productive way of landing at it. So I would say that the writing process changed, and well, I'll be shameless about this. I actually have a book coming up with the Max Ernst Museum.
Wait, are you serious? Oh my gosh.
Um,
I did not know about this. What?
and I guess that with this material, I'm kind of bringing the learning of AI prompting, putting more hope and optimism and like a protopian worldview into writing. So that's cool. That's cool. That is cool. Yeah.
That is really cool. Oh my goodness. Congratulations. So amazing. Love to hear that, and I cannot wait to share about your book once it's coming out. And I'm thinking about like the power of art and the power of writing and language, and just curious like what you've witnessed as you've delved deeper into your own art practice and have started to share your work and started to get feedback and people have started to resonate or connect with your work. What have you learned, or what's like emerged for you around thinking of your own art practice as a spell practice, as a magical practice? I'm just curious like what you've learned or anything you want to share about that process.
I see it very connected to neuroscience in the way that you can actually visualize your thought pattern like changing, and you can be more proactive towards an outcome that feels intuitively right. My approach to AI has been like a lot of rewiring, I would say, and also materializing that which for some might be impossible. And I'm talking about hyperhumanity, or like bodies made of latex and feathers, and like this beautiful regalia that is very connected to a culture, but it's also connected to the language of fashion and color as a form of communicating love, expansion, prosperity.
So earlier you brought up this word meteoric, and I just want to share a little bit about it for folks who don't know that. It is a technology, a practice from the meteoric community from Mexico, and it is essentially a tool that is used to communicate with ancestors. It is also an offering, it is also a map, and it's a map that shows other realms, not just the earthly realms, but the spiritual realms. It is a map that shows relationships, that guides, that allows you to also receive wisdom, inspiration. And I've been creating a lot of meteoric using digital practices, including like digital painting, collage. I've been generating images with AI as well, and just bringing them together. And for me, it's really a practice of honoring an animist perspective and connecting with the essence, the soul, the spirit, the consciousness of many different beings and elements in our world, and also trying to not create hierarchies, so creating more of a web-like structure. And I'm thinking about what you were saying earlier. I remember kind of as you were sharing, like imagining underground mycelial web coming from your work, and especially with what you were naming around being able to imagine things into existence that might not be possible right now, or that allow you to explore things that you're curious about and excited about. And I'm, wondering for you, what has it been like to create things with your imagination, beings with your imagination, places with your imagination in collaboration with AI? And also, like, how are you seeing your relationship with AI at this moment?
I like the idea of reframing AI as ancestral intuition, because you were mentioning ancestors, and you also mentioned like bringing forward indigenous technology, and that's what I've always admired about your work, that you are bringing this ancestral lens to the future, but also to digital practices. And like through our history, like there are this weird and kind of quite racist ideas, I would say, about what indigenous art can be and the medium it should be. And I guess that something that really inspired me about your work is that you show that possibility of mutation and transformation, which it's just super queer and also so expansive. Yeah, so for me, And I've thought a lot about this. I think that the beings I'm not I think I know that the beings that are created are images of future ancestors and ancestors of blood, but also ancestors of purpose. And to me, as a migrant in this country, for me, it's important to highlight, like that idea of expanded family and how that is also connected to my art and the images that I'm rendering, but family meaning not only human people, but also plant people, stone people, and the many beings that are present in our ecosystem. I think that's really the beautiful thing about indigenous cosmologies that has historically been erased in westernized societies, like this idea of everything having its own life and really life existing in cooperation as opposed to competition. So yeah, and my work, I also, when I say ancestral intuition, I also mean survivance and the possibility of existing in the right conditions, and kind of, thinking of how nature already does this. Like during the wildfires, I had the possibility to go to the Yucca Valley, and I was just fascinated because I've never seen yucca trees before. And as I was reading, they're not really trees biologically, and that sounds familiar. But they are succulents. They're closer to succulents. And what I love about them is that the conditions of the desert are so ideal that they just become this very odd, very sculptural plant. And if you've ever been to the Yucca Valley, each tree has its own personality and they're all dramatic. And I love that.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add about yuccas and also Joshua trees is that they're odd and they are also an interconnected being because underneath the ground, all their roots reach out to each other. They actually grow horizontally underneath the ground because they're trying to find each other and connect with each other. And I know this because I worked with the ecologist who studies the mycelial webs that grow along with these roots. And to me, it's also really powerful that a being can be both its own individual self and also a part of a larger organism that's in communion and communication. And to me, that also like speaks to some of those like possibilities that we as humans are starting to remember and wake up to, and that are of course a part of Indigenous cosmology and history around that reciprocal, cooperative, relational ecosphere that we're talking about. And I'm curious, you've been bringing up that you're a migrant and that, talking about Indigenous practices. And I'm curious if you would like to just share a little bit about where you're from and what it's been like to also connect with your own Indigenous practices or histories.
Yeah, so I come from the Guarani people, which are peoples that historically have lived for millennia in the southern region. What we understand, current understanding of maps, Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay. And so I was commissioned to do this film for Red Cat, which is titled Deep Time Dance. And it's talking about the process of geological formation, but it's also thinking about dance and this dance as this historical space for queerness to exist and to be very embodied. And so this film, it connects with the Guarani origin story of this figure that is called Tupã. And Tupã is also a mainumbu, which in Guarani means hummingbird. And this hummingbird, and if you think about hummingbirds, they're like the ultimate cross pollinizers. So, again, that idea of beings collaborating and beings kind of serving a purpose for greater good, for source, God, however you want to call it. And thinking about how AI could serve as a way to reconnect with these ideas, and that, yes, there has been some erasure and many things we don't know and we won't know. And also, we can't really idealize the pre-colonial past either. But I think it's important to connect with the intelligence of the ancestors that still live through these stories. And there's a prophecy that I share when I preface this film. Like, the prophecy is kind of written in a paragraph from the Jigwakawa clan, that the Guaraní talk about word as a soul. And when I think about my own practice, I think about prompting with AI and like the importance of bringing soul into it, or how we might unconsciously already bring soul into the things that we do. And this circles back to the idea of art as spell making, and like words being spells, words as spell casting, words as systems of knowledge, words as houses. And when you understand the importance of words, the ancestral Guarani already knew about this. You understand that they are so important because you create with them.
You an artist, curator, or which that resonates with these ideas. We're currently seeking collaborators, sponsors, and future guests for Your Art is a Spell. If you're interested in being a part of this journey, visit our website, yourartisaspell.com, and sign up for our newsletter, or you can contact me directly. And you'll find that contact information on the same website. Let's create magic together. Yeah, I guess like with what you're naming about words and spells and AI, it's really making me think of what the, maybe at this moment in time that we're living in, what the larger mainstream cultural understanding of AI is, how as you name it, being ancestral intuition. Not a lot of people think of it that way, right? A lot of people, when they think of AI, they might have other images in their head of what it means, what it stands for, who it's for, what its purpose is. And I know that there's a lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of unknown. And so I'm curious for you, as someone who's working with this practice, who's making art and exploring your own identities, your cultures, your histories, your communities, what would you like to say to those people who maybe have only learned about AI through what's maybe being sensationalized or what's trending on social media? Like, yeah, is there anything you'd like to say about that?
I'll say I hear you and I understand, because we've been programmed with science fiction films from Hollywood mostly, which tap into what people between the 40s and the 60s thought the future would look like. And certain things of those futures are being replicated, as, there is a tendency in general in society to tap into dystopia as a form of world building and as a form of connecting with what the future is. I also think that I'm beyond utopia and dystopia. I would like to propose protopia, which is a framework by futurist Monica Bielskite. And it's basically a bigger framework of thinking, of designing a future, co-creating it with the principles of life-centered design, biosphere regeneration, ecological imagination, understanding human rights and the rights of the non-human as well. I think that moving towards protopian design is something that requires a lot of imagination. That's the work of artists right now, to decenter some of these harmful ideas, because at this point, if you hate AI, it's because you've internalized and you're responding to harmful ideas around it, this disembodied entity that might take away your jobs and many other problematic ideas. I do think that also with technology, we fear a lot, and that is understandable, but fear won't take you places. Courage will.
Yeah, and with you saying that, I'm also just really sitting with how a lot of the mainstream narrative is kind of feeding into what we've seen historically, like apocalyptic visions, right? And as you're naming, a protopian vision really looks at life in such a different way and wants to collaborate, wants to co-create, wants to also think about the impact that we're having and the impact that we have as we like move forward into the future. So I've just been really excited to see your protopian vision rendered through AI, through your own artistic practice. And I'm just curious what it's been like for you to hold that space, such a unique vision that, you know, obviously exemplifies your culture, your history, your identities. What's it been like for you to hold that space within like the AI community globally, since I know you're someone who goes around the world talking about your practices and AI as an artistic practice as well?
I think it's a process of self-discovery on the one hand, and also challenging the possibilities of what this agent can do and how we can collaborate with it. The thing about AI is that it can be very scary, but once you overcome like that certain preconceived notions about what is, you can actually engage with it and do so much more. I will say that although I am perhaps one of the few who is working with this perspective, with an indigenous protopian perspective, my work is also informed by, you know, the work of Dr. Susan Kite, Tia Roxanne, and many other indigenous peoples working across technology and science, and also trying to bridge these connections that are not so obvious for others. Susan Kite said something that still resonates with me, and is that she's from the Lakota, and she talks about, you know, thinking of AI as the intelligence emerging from the alchemical process of stones becoming machines and hardware, and how if we sever she's talking about in terms of like what severing indigenous peoples from the lands has done, and the damage that has done. And there could be so much damage if we also think of this way with AI.
Yeah, I love what you just bring up. I think it's really important to talk about this, where I almost see this as like the tactical purpose of treating AI as something scary, something that you shouldn't touch or connect with. It's a way of collapsing and also stopping people from potentially entering into relationship. And this reminds me so much of how the materialist Western paradigm has also made it so that we don't believe in our connection to ancestors, our connections to plants, to crystals, to the clouds, to trees, like that there is a way that consciousness is weaponized, and fear becomes something that's used as a tactic to get us to not connect with something. And so I could see this very easily being replicated within the narrative of AI, where if the mainstream narrative is we're afraid of it, I shouldn't touch it, I shouldn't even look at it or understand it, what does that do to our ability to be in communion, in relationship as it's developing? And also, as you're naming, as it's also being an essence of rocks, of minerals, of crystals that are coming from the earth and that are sharing their also essence, their energy through these portals that we can engage with, right? So like, I'm just like really just sitting with that, like, what does that do? And so I'm curious if there's anything you want to say about that.
It reminds me of the fear of the other, and that liminal space between what is human and what is not, and how we also conceive like objection and like ideas of the monstrous and the alien. There are so many iterations of what the other looks like, and I think that we are risking so much possibility of connection when thinking of AI in this way too. That being said, we should be critical of the ways in which this technology is used to, you know, bring ideas about disembodiment and disconnection with the human, which is not the purpose either. This is what the tech oligarchs might want. But part of the process of reframing our relationship to it is also moving towards a different form of relating to it. I think that if AI can automate so many harmful things, with the right approach to design, it can also automate so many beautiful, luscious, and vibrant ideas, worlds, things that can aid our creativity and can pour our imagination for creating together.
And I'm curious, with you bringing up the word like tech oligarchs,
Don't make me name them.
I don't want you to name them. No. No, I'm just like, this is like, it's interesting to me. I'm like wondering, like, do you see your work as like having like an activist lens to it, or being a part of the response to the tech oligarchs, or to some of the critiques that are needed in the realm of AI?
Yes, in the sense that our bodies and perhaps the intersections that I'm representing are visible in my work. There is certainly a response. There's an opaque response that is perhaps not directly seen as a different form of activist intervention, but for sure it's informed by a different body politic. It's informed by a sovereign way of being, and that's what they fear. But we're not going to stop because they fear that, and they want to induce fear of that. Our lives are precious.
Yes. Yeah, they definitely are. And I'm just really grateful to you for making time for coming on this podcast and speaking with me. And I'm like curious if you have anything that you want to share about your practice, anything's going on that you feel our community would like to know about. And also, how can folks connect with you?
My film Deep Time Dance will be screening. It's actually part of an exhibition in London at the Art by Gallery. So if you're in London, go check it out. Some really cool artists thinking through ideas about objectivity and subjectivity and how that is connected to science and marginalized perspectives, curated by Helen Starr. That will be starting in February 2025. I'm also presenting an extended version of this film in Berlin when I culminate my residency with Akademie der Kunst and Iwerk Luckenwald. What else?
I heard you might be doing a performance. I've heard that there's maybe a performance happening. Is that something you can share about or no?
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah, so I'm performing with a robotic agent, what you might know as a robot dog. This is going to be very cool. It's a queer indigenous approach to relating to this new technology and perhaps decoupling it from its problematic roots. We'll be at Rip Space during Freeze LA Art Week coming up on February 21st. And where can you find me? I'm in all the socials as at Xonorika, Xonorika. Thank you so much for having me, Edgar. It's been lovely. I'm so grateful. And this place is lovely.
Yeah. It's so nice that we can have our podcast episode here on this beautiful campus that you all could see. Thank you so much for being here. It's so exciting how much you have going on, and I'm just so proud of you, all the work you've been doing, and just so grateful that I could share about you and your work. I'd love to show little highlights of some of your work in case people want to see it, and I will definitely be linking all of the places where folks can find you in the description. Go check that out. And also, I'm going to be naming some of the people that you brought in that are inspiring for you. I'm also showing them in case people are interested in looking them up. Before we close, is there anything else you want to share? Anything that you weren't able to share that you want to bring in?
I would just like to close with a baby Spice smile, because she said that if you smile, you bring better luck into your world. And I'm a Scorpio. I feel like I can't hide my emotions, but I do try to smile often. Thank you, Edgar.
Yeah, thank you. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can't see that smile. I do want to remind you that these videos do appear on my YouTube channel. So if you want to check out that beautiful baby Spice smile, go on that YouTube channel and check out our video. Thank you so much, everyone. And don't forget, your art is a spell, and it will...
And it's a portal.
Yes, your art is a spell, and it's a portal, and it's going to change the world.
How do you say... I forgot the word.
Cut or...
No, like the creed. The creed?
What are you trying to say?
So like when you finish a spell and you're like, decretado.
You could say, so mote it be, or so be it or better. That's, yeah.
So be it or better.
So be it or better. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Wow. That was such a lovely conversation that I had with Kira. As you could see, there are so many beautiful connections between us and our work, both of us being queer, trans, Indigenous artists that are working within digital mediums. I'm also so honored for her to share her story about how we met and how my own art practice and my belief in art as a spellcasting practice has truly helped her step into her power. And you can see how much she is doing now with her art practice. I know that AI is such a complex, contentious topic, and there's so many thoughts, opinions, and feelings about it. And I want to just say that it is so important for us to all be a part of this conversation. We cannot let certain groups of people make decisions for us around what these technologies are and how we will be using them. We also need to continue to critique the ways in which these technologies can disempower artists or can add to an exploitation of artists. We need to continue to make sure that we include marginalized voices within the conversation of AI. And that is one of the reasons why I love that Kira is out there sharing her art, sharing her visions, sharing her words around these technologies. We need her voice in this space. And so I'm thrilled to share her here on the third episode of Your Art is a Spell. Now, just want to remind you that if you would like to support this podcast, you can do so by subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast, by leaving a review. That really helps us get out to more witches, weirdists, and artists so that they can also all be a part of this beautiful spell that we're casting together. And not only that, I want to invite you to sign up for my newsletter because that is the number one way you can get in touch with me. You can also find out about the newest episodes coming out. You can share suggestions for future guests, and you can also ask questions and be in contact with me and be a part of a wonderful community on my newsletter. You can find all of that by going to yourartisaspell.com. And again, if you're here on YouTube, hello, leave a comment, subscribe, let me know you're here. This is also a great way for us to stay in touch and to continue to amplify this much needed work of empowering us as artists to change the world and to reclaim our power and transform everything around us. Remember, this spell cannot happen alone. We need all of us to be a part of it, and you do your part by subscribing, by leaving a comment, by leaving a review, by telling your friends about this podcast. And I do want to remind you that I am going to be selecting one person who will leave a review for a free 30-minute tarot reading in a future episode. I will be announcing that in a future episode. I'm not sure which one, so let those reviews come in. And once we get a few, I will be selecting someone for season 1 to be the person that receives a free tarot reading. And in your review, you can let me know what kinds of episodes you're liking, what you want to hear from me, what would be helpful and supportive. What are you struggling with as an artist? How can you feel more empowered to share your art? What are some things that we need to change in this world to make art more accessible for people? These are all things that I want to talk about on future episodes. Thank you again for being a part of this collective spell and for adding your energy to it. Remember, your art is a spell, and it will change your life and the world around you. Bye.